This is NASCAR Coast to Coast, brought to you by Hercules Tires, right on our strength, and by Grunt Style. Now, with all the news from NASCAR touring, local and international series racing, here are RIckey and Hannah Newhouse.
Partridge is the latest winner in the West. Rocco's streak is snapped at Stafford. And we introduce you to a K&N hopeful who's used to turning left and right on ice. Welcome to NASCAR Coast to Coast for Wednesday, May 30th, 2018. RIckey joined by Hannah Newhouse, who is back with us this week in our Charlotte, North Carolina studios. And Hannah, first off, how was your time away with the family last week in Idaho?
It was really good. It was good to be back home. Haven't been back in about 6 months, but the little brother, the last Newhouse, finally graduated high school. So welcome to adulthood. You're in for it. Let me just say that.
Yeah, no doubt. Life's about to change in a big way for him here over the course of the next couple of years. Last week, obviously, we heard about a lot of the NASCAR Next drivers here on the show. You were down at that event. This past weekend, not a whole lot of NASCAR touring action. So let's review some of the races from 2 weeks ago, including the NASCAR K&N Pro Series West race. They ran the Sunrise Ford 150 presented by Napa Auto Parts at the Orange Show Speedway in California. Ryan Partridge claiming his first win of the season in a race dominated by Sunrise Ford Racing, Hannah. They have it going on right now with Partridge winning that race and Derek Thorne finishing second, and I believe they're 1-2 in points.
Yeah, they really do, but that was the goal that Sunrise Ford had going into this season. You know, Bob Brancotti rounded up the troops, per se, with Ryan Partridge and Derek Thorne because he wanted this championship this year, and he knew if he was going to do it, he had to get the right drivers. So to get these two drivers, they're showing that consistency has been key. They've been top 5 almost every single race. Ryan finally ends up in the victory circle, and these two are going to be tough to contend with all season, and they're good short track racers. They've got the experience, they know how to work traffic, and they know how to save their equipment, maybe more so than a lot of these young drivers. So Sunrise Ford is going to give Bill McAnally Racing a run for their money in this championship contention.
Speaking of those young drivers, how about young 16-year-old Hailie Deegan? You talked to her last week as part of our NASCAR Next show at the event in Uptown Charlotte. A young driver that seems like she's getting more confident each and every week, finishing 4th a couple of weeks back.
Yeah, one of the things I really like about Hailie is, you know, she has a lot of hype around her. She's got a lot of eyes on her. She's got TV, people looking up to her. So Hailie has to watch her every move. And when I talked to her at the NASCAR Next event, I was like, hey, you know, do you feel this pressure? She's like, I do, but I have to have my, you know, I can't just take the pressure and run with it. I have to be able to have the finishes too. And she goes, we have a 7th place finish right now. That's it. That's the highest finish we have. And she got this 4th place finish this last week in an Orange Show. So she's continually building on it to have all of this hype match up with her results. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see her, you know, get a runner-up finish or maybe even contend at the end of the year. They do have a dirt track on the schedule this year.
At the Las Vegas Motor Speedway coming up in September. And you may know the answer to this question as a former driver. As far as Hailie is concerned, putting in the laps every week she can at the Irwindale Speedway in California, ran 2 more races this past weekend in a late model. How much does that track time help and transfer over to the K&N car?
I think it helps a lot. She's running the right kind of late models that will transfer over to a K&N star, those really heavy stock cars. That's going to help her because she comes from this dirt world that they're just on the chip, up on the wheel, manhandling, throwing these cars. And in stock car racing, it's consistency. It's hitting your marks every single lap. So for her to be able to get in the wheel or get behind the wheel multiple times leading up to each race, it's huge for her. But she's also got people coaching her. She's got Eric Holmes. She's got her other fellow teammates that are coaching her. And so the best thing that she can do for herself is just log laps to also be able to communicate. Communication is huge for young drivers to be able to tell their crew chief or their car chief what they want, because more and more often we're seeing kids not able to communicate what their race cars are doing. So Hailie's learning on all aspects of the racing spectrum.
Derek Kraus and Cole Rouse are other couple of teammates at Bill McAnally Racing. She ran those twin late model features this past Saturday night at Irwindale Speedway. The local truck series also competed at Irwindale over the weekend, won by Ryan Partridge. He will join us in a bit. Also on the show today, Olympic bobsledder Nick Cunningham, who is trying to break into NASCAR, but Hannah, coming through a very non-traditional form of racing.
Yes, I actually heard of Nick a couple years ago. We're both from the Boise State University world, and he'd communicated back and forth with me about how it was cool that I was racing and he liked NASCAR, but he was from bobsledding, so such a different way. But I had read about him and his involvement with Patriot Motorsports, who Jesse Owigi is a pretty common name anymore, actually, in motorsports, races for out on the West Coast. And he'd always mentioned how he wanted to be a part of it and wanted to try this. And so he's getting this opportunity. He's going to do some testing in some late models, some K&N cars, with hopefully getting his NASCAR license approved to run some K&N races later this year.
And that's been part of the last 3 Winter Olympic Games for the U.S. bobsled team. So we'll talk with him coming up in a little bit here on NASCAR Coast to Coast. But first, a driver that has already established a career in NASCAR in the NASCAR K&N Pro Series West, and he is the series' latest winner. Ryan Partridge joins us after the break.
Grunt style. The American fighting spirit is in everything we make. We are 500 patriots and veterans strong, bringing clothing manufacturing back to the United States of America. Always moving forward, never retreating, never giving up. We are Grunt Style, and this we'll defend. Get yours at gruntstyle.com.
When the smoke settles, the entertainment never stops.
Maybe I'll run my retirement tour in the truck series.
On race weekends, your favorite NASCAR personality is an everyday superhero.
Kyle Busch wins at Dover.
But when they leave the racetrack, they're just like everyone else.
It's me in the truck series. People don't like it. You know, I'm stealing candy from a baby.
I'm Susie Armstrong. Join me on a daily journey as we discuss the hot topics and engaging personalities of NASCAR Nation. Ned Jarrett's World of Racing, weekdays on the Motor Racing Network.
I'm Steve Post. The Wing Nation Roadshow is on the road to Minnesota.
This is Aaron Evernham, and we'll be live from the AGCO Jackson Nationals at Jackson Motorplex.
Join MRN's Wing Nation, presented by the Minnesota Mafia, June 7th through the 9th.
We'll talk with drivers from the World of Outlaws and the top drivers in the Midwest.
MRN's Wing Nation, presented by the Minnesota Mafia, live from the AGCO Jackson Nationals, June 7th through 9th.
Join us at Jackson Motorplex live or listen online on MRN.com.
This is NASCAR Coast to Coast, brought to you by Hercules Tires and by Grunt Style. Here are Kyle Rickey and Hannah Newhouse.
Welcome back to NASCAR Coast to Coast here on the Motor Racing Network. So glad you can join Hannah Newhouse and I as we talk NASCAR short track racing. The NASCAR K&N Pro Series West in action about 8 days ago at the Orange Show Speedway in California. Joining us on the guest line, the winner of that race, Ryan Partridge. Ryan, welcome back to NASCAR Coast to Coast, and congratulations on what was it looked like a pretty dominant day for you and your race team.
Yeah, thank you guys for having us. It was a fun day. It was good old-fashioned short track racing at its best. Being Orange Show Speedway here in San Bernardino. It's one of the shortest track, probably the shortest track we race all season long. So very tight quarters, and we were exactly where you want to be on a small track like that, out front and clean air.
Now, how nostalgic was it for you to end up back in victory lane with, your Sunrise Ford team? You've ran for Brancati before. How nostalgic was it when you guys pulled back into victory lane this past weekend?
Oh, it was nice. It was, the whole team's on a high right now. Bob Brancati has, Derek Thorne in the 6, myself in the 9, and Trevor Huddleston in the 22 this year. And Bob is extremely happy. The whole team's extremely happy that we're performing so well as a team. It's been McAnally and BMR, they got their stuff together. They got very strong competitive cars. It's been a struggle for us the last couple of years to compete, but we're up on top with Sunrise Ford, and we're really just on cloud 9.
Does this win help kind of put the sting or take the sting away from 2016 out a little bit? You're leading 137 laps in 2 years ago at Orange Show, only to fall short.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, definitely redemption at a track. San Bernardino's not too far from my house. Probably 45 minutes away, and I wouldn't exactly call it my home track. My home track would be Irwindale Speedway, but I've raced there a few times. And again, being such a tight track, in 2016 we led 90% of the race, and only to fall short, coming to a lap car that we had trouble getting out of the way, or we end up collecting and spinning and going to the back for that. So definitely redemption. Felt good. And not only just to win, but to win the dominant fashion. It's always the icing on the cake when you can set pole, lead just about every lap, and do it, again, the dominant fashion. It just again shows what type of equipment we're in. Bob Bruncotti and Bill Sedgwick, the crew chief, my personal crew chief, Jeff Schrader, really give me a great car and a good opportunity to show how strong the equipment is.
Now, you're winning not only in the NASCAR K&N Pro Series West, but I also recently saw that you had won in a truck at Irwindale. You also dabble in some modified racing as well. What does your schedule look like away from the NASCAR K&N Pro Series West?
Oh, yeah, it's busy. We run, this year we're running about every weekend. I think we get 1 or 2 weekends off all season long. But that's, if you want to stay competitive, if you want to be the best, and you want to stay as far as personally stay on top and try to stay again as competitive as you can be, you got to be in the car, in the seat, every opportunity you can. So yeah, we run the number 9 in the Lucas Oil Modified Series. Unfortunately, a lot of our races conflict with the West Series, and the West Series is our focus. So we actually only have, I think, 3 races in the mod this year, but we're also running a truck out at Irwindale Speedway, a spec truck, and we're running that 12 dates this year. We've got 4 under our belt already. We ran this last weekend, and I'll run anything. I'll run a go-kart. I'll run legend cars. It don't matter. If somebody has a car for me to drive, I'm willing to drive it. For example, this last weekend, another truck series came to town, which is the Southwest Tour Truck Series, and we're able to do double duty at Irwindale and run our normal spec truck and then that Southwest Tour truck. So yeah, I mean, you really, as a driver, you gotta stay tuned up, and any different I know they're different cars, not exactly like a K&N car, but the more that you can drive and a different style of car, it really adds to your understanding and spectrum and knowledge of racing. So being able to be, adapt and be quick to adapt and only take a couple laps to adapt, that's pretty important.
Now, the NASCAR K&N Pro Series West back in action at Colorado National Speedway coming up in a couple weeks' time on June 9th. And to my knowledge, and I know it could change, Chris Eggleston will not be in the field. His home racetrack in a race that he's dominated 3 of the last 4 years. That other race, though, you were able to win in 2015. You excited to get back to that 3rd Mile Oval in Erie, Colorado here in about 10 days?
Yeah, absolutely. Colorado is one of our favorite tracks. It has a lot of character. I like tracks with quirks. Colorado gets a lot of off-season winter time, so the track tends to freeze and move around, and so every year you come back and it's a little different. It's definitely got some character, and it's nice because it's a dynamic racetrack in that throughout the race the preferred line moves around. You'll start on the bottom, and then the second lane will the second groove will work in, and then you got to shoot up to the second groove, and then maybe at the end of the race when it comes time to really go, you might be back down at the bottom. So I really appreciate and prefer those type of racetracks. Where there's multiple dynamics again, of the race and how you have to run and strategy and all that.
Now, again, looking forward in the K&N Pro Series West schedule, you'd mentioned how Orange Show was a little bit of a nitty-gritty short track racing, lots of fender rubbing, and obviously you guys showed that you are good there and you dominated that race. A similar racetrack also on the schedule, Meridian Speedway, short track, lots of door banging. Do you guys think that you have a promising chance of winning there as well, showing how good you were out in California?
Yeah, so I do think we have a pretty good short track car right now, short track program. So, you get into the larger tracks, the Kern counties, the Iowas. Equipment's a huge deal. Aero's a big deal. And I think that right now we really do have the strongest short track program in the series. So, and again, I've been doing it a little while. Derek Thorne's been doing it quite a while. And it's nice to to have a teammate that we can kind of bounce ideas and set up info back and forth. And he could be trying A, B, and C. I'll be at D, E, and F. And at the end of practice, we'll come together, decide what worked, what didn't work, and how we're gonna go get them.
All right, Ryan Partridge joining us here on NASCAR Coast to Coast, the latest winner in the NASCAR K&N Pro Series West, and right there in the thick of the championship hunt. Ryan, thank you for joining us here on the show. Congratulations on the win, and best of luck to you the rest of this 2018 season.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for having me.
All right, that is Ryan Partridge, winner just a couple of weeks back at Orange Show Speedway, the latest event on the NASCAR K&N Pro Series West calendar. After the break, we switch gears and chat with Olympic bobsledder Nick Cunningham, who is looking to make his mark in the NASCAR world. Nick will join us after the break.
Citywide to countryside, whatever you drive, wherever you go. Hercules Tires has the value, selection, and industry-leading warranty to get you there, no matter where the road takes you. To learn more, visit HerculesTire.com. Hercules Tires, ride on our strength.
The 1993 Cup Series season had more than its fair share of twists and turns.
Checkered flags waving. I look in my mirror, and here's Earnhardt right on my tail, and he goes down low to pass me. And I said, oh, no, you don't.
As Wallace spins, Wallace's car goes on its nose.
Here's stories that you've never heard before in a 10-part series called The 1993 Season, 25 years later.
And Davey was behind me, and we came off the corner, and there's a guy standing in the middle of the racetrack.
You can download it for free on iTunes and at MRN.com right now.
Hi, I'm Rob Tanner, inviting you to the all-new America's Tailgate Party, NASCAR USA. The sound is updated with fresh features and more of the voices you hear at the racetrack each week. The one thing that hasn't changed? It's 2 hours of the hottest hits in country music as we get you ready to go racing. So join us for the brand new edition of America's Tailgate Party, NASCAR USA, at the same place right here on the Motor Racing Network.
This is NASCAR Coast to Coast, brought to you by Hercules Tires and by Grunt Style. Here are Kyle Rickey and Hannah Newhouse.
Usually on this show, we talk with drivers that are racing for NASCAR track and series championships. I don't believe we've ever had an Olympic athlete on the show before, but that's about to change as we welcome Nick Cunningham to the show. Nick is on the Olympic bobsledding team as he hails from Los Gatos, California, and is hoping to work his way into the NASCAR world. And Nick, let's begin the conversation with the kind of speed that has found you so much success, and that's in a 2- and 4-man bobsled. You've competed in the last 3 Winter Olympic Games, including the most recent in South Korea. You're a high school track athlete that found yourself bobsledding. Kind of walk us through that path and ultimately what led you to Lake Placid.
Yeah, so it's first, thank you for having me. It's pretty incredible to kind of take this next step with life and see if maybe my skills on the ice can be kind of applied to something on the pavement. But always loved racing. Grew up around it. My dad worked for Valvoline Oil in the sales division, so I was on the other side of the track, watching a lot and always kind of had a passion for it. And believe it or not, track and field was kind of my way to race. It was the poor man's racing. It was me versus them, fastest man wins, and I loved that. Once I graduated from high school, went away on a track scholarship, and my parents actually joked that the road we were driving on looked like a bobsled track, and that I was fast and should try out. And so once I eventually I transferred schools and at Boise State University, once I graduated from Boise, I decided that what better, graduation gift to kind of myself. And, worst case scenario, I got a really good bar joke down the road to say that I tried out for the bobsled team. And 18 months later, went to my first Olympics. And then that was as a brakeman. And then, right after the 2010 Olympics, turned into a driver and learned that craft and kept going for the next Olympics.
Definitely an adrenaline rush, but a different kind of speed. So I've seen pictures, I believe, of you testing recently actually out at Kern County Raceway Park, or at least a picture of you in the car. How did you get hooked up with a team, and what team to, like you said, take this next step potentially in a life chapter?
So it was a weird, I was active duty military, and somebody told me to follow Jesse Iwuji. They said, he's in the Navy and he races, check it out. So I looked at it and I was like, wait, this guy's going to Boise, Idaho. Like, he's active duty military. He lived in Monterey at the time, which is where I was living, where I grew up kind of right in that area. And he was going to Boise to go race with a team out there. So, I mean, the 3 points of the triangle were all kind of, telling me that there's a chance. So got hooked up with Jesse. He told me to go to Boise and go test some late model cars and some modified out at Meridian Speedway, and introduced me to John Wood of Patriot Motorsports Group. And what they're doing out there is absolutely incredible. Without them, this would still just be a dream. And he's letting me get into these cars and get qualified, and to really make this lifelong dream start to be more of a reality now, to, go out there and be on track with guys like Kevin Harvick and Todd Gilliland, and see these guys and watch these guys run, and to know that, I didn't have to start at 4 or 5 years old and make my way up the ranks. He's given me an opportunity to do this at this point in my life, which is absolutely fantastic.
Now, NBC, the broadcasting partner for this year's Winter Olympics, brought Dale Earnhardt Jr. to the games this year, and you were able to interact with him a little bit, even offering him a ride. How was that experience like? And do you guys still stay in touch? I know he's busy right now, and so are you.
Yeah. So I mean, that was really. I've been fortunate enough to meet some celebrities, and I've met 2 different presidents. I've been in the White House 3 times. Like, I've been able to do some really, really cool stuff. That was one of the moments where I was legitimately starstruck, where, I didn't know, I know the history. I know what he represents and who he is. And the coolest thing about him and getting him in the garage and getting him to look at our sleds was he was a racer's racer. He's asking us different little questions about stuff that, most people are like, oh, do you crash and do you, what happens here, what happens there, how do you steer? He's asking very detailed questions about the chassis, suspension that we have, different stuff that you just, unless you're a driver and just a skilled kind of have that mindset, you just don't ask the kind of questions that he asked. So it was really kind of cool to have him there and to show what we do. He didn't get in the sled with me yet. I'm still, still waiting to get him down that hill. But it was cool to kind of have him around and just see his eyes light up when sleds went, 85, 90 miles an hour past his face.
I guess you learn something new every day. I had no idea that those bobsleds even had suspension. So new thing learned for the day. It's typical racing. You get the rule book and you exploit the gray area in the rules. So it's not necessarily suspension, but there's a little rubber in there that we can kind of move stuff around. There you go, the gray area, all about the gray area. Well,
the gray area.
You mentioned that you were out at Meridian Speedway, and it is a process to get your license, approved. It's a process to be able to run in the NASCAR K&N Pro Series East and West. How far away are you from this process, and maybe when is the first race we're going to see you, go out and compete?
John Wood of Patriot Motorsports Group really thinks that by the end of this season, I should be getting in a couple West races. It's the big thing for him was making sure I'm not going out there, 1, crashing his cars, 2, crashing any other cars, and just, can I keep the same line going around the track? He wants to make sure I'm not kind of all over the place and getting in people's way. So I think him getting me down at Kern County in Bakersfield and kind of putting me on track with other big name teams and big name drivers, and seeing how I worked in. I was out there for an hour and a half to really get comfortable in the car and kind of get over the fact that I'm in a car and, really start feeling it and understanding there's actually a lot of similarities between bobsled and driving a NASCAR. And so to kind of pick up on those keys and to go and to work with a spotter and to work with other cars on track. Because it's easy for me to go to Meridian Speedway and, get on the track by myself. But to get on with other cars is a completely different ballgame. So I think he was kind of seeing that. And I think we're kind of now it's just a matter of getting, someone to pay for it and getting in the car.
Oh, sponsorship is everything in NASCAR.
It is everything.
One of the mega pieces that you need to go racing. I want to wrap up this conversation with the current trip that you're on. I believe you're in Nashville now, or you were yesterday, and then 2 days ago you were at Charlotte Motor Speedway for the Coca-Cola 600. How was your weekend out at the 1.5 mile oval in Charlotte?
Oh, it was absolutely incredible. I mean, it was honestly a dream trip. I guess if you're in that, you do it week in, week out. But for me to go and to see the track and take my girlfriend to her first NASCAR race and to see her face when those cars took green for the first time, and to we were only 10 rows up, to see that and then go back and be behind pit road and meet some drivers, and it was just an incredible experience. And got to go there for the ARCA race and got to see that, got to go to the drivers meetings, crew chief meetings, rookie driver meetings. So they're trying to get me caught up as quickly as possible, doing as much as possible, so I can kind of be a sponge and soak it all in and be a student of the sport. And so it was an absolute incredible experience in Charlotte. Charlotte took care of me. Charlotte Motor Speedway took care of me. And yeah, we're doing a cross country road trip, Lake Placid to Charlotte, Charlotte to Nashville, Nashville to Austin, to Amarillo, Flagstaff, Vegas, Monterey. So we're having a good cross country road trip.
A lot of the hot spots in this country, no doubt. Nick Cunningham joining us here on NASCAR Coast to Coast. Nick, best of luck to you in the future. Hopefully we'll see you on the racetrack here in the next couple months.
Thank you guys for having me. I'm excited. Hopefully you will too.
Olympic bobsledding star Nick Cunningham joining us here on NASCAR Coast to Coast. One driver that we'll be keeping an eye on, no doubt. Coming up, we'll wrap up this edition of NASCAR Coast to Coast here on the Motor Racing Network.
Grunt style. The American fighting spirit is in everything we make. We are 500 patriots and veterans strong, bringing clothing manufacturing back to the United States of America. Always moving forward, never retreating, never giving up. We are Grunt Style, and this we'll defend. Get yours at gruntstyle.com.
The Motor Racing Network is drawing lines every week on MRN.com. Choose the fastest line on Thursdays with the Straight Line, a nitro-fueled half-hour showcasing the biggest names on the NHRA circuit. On Fridays, take the shortest line with the Inside Line, your source for NASCAR fantasy racing insight from experts in and around the garage. Don't miss the Straight Line and the Inside Line, Thursdays and Fridays at noon Eastern, only on MRN.com.
MRN.com. Original online audio, video, and digital content. Need the latest information on each week's races? Check out the MRN.com Race Center. Need to find your local radio station for MRN original programs and Camping World Truck, Xfinity, and Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series races? Go to Stations on MRN.com. All the latest NASCAR news and opinion pieces, race schedules, driver standings, and archives of MRN programs, MRN race broadcasts, and so much more. MRN.com. This is NASCAR Coast to Coast, brought to you by Hercules Tires and by Grunt Style. Here are Kyle Rickey and Hannah Newhouse.
Wrapping up this edition of NASCAR Coast to Coast and examining the NASCAR Whelen All-American Series Division I standings. And there's a familiar face at the front with Philip Morris leading the way by a whopping 6 points over a couple of West Coast standouts in Lawless Allen and Jagger Jones, both racing at the Irwindale Speedway. Sam Mayer and Trey Gibson complete the top 5 in the National Series for NASCAR's short track division in Division I. A lot of action over the weekend. Kingsport Speedway in Tennessee, they ran, and it was Chris Van Dyke, another familiar name, picking up the win, I believe his third of the season over Zeke Shell and Robbie Ferguson. At the Stafford Motor Speedway in Connecticut, Rowan Pennick snapped the 6-race win streak for Keith Rocco, held off Ronnie Williams, and Rocco was third. Irwindale Speedway, the late models ran a double dip of action. It was Trevor Huddleston winning both events. Blaine Perkins finished second in race number 1. Lawless Allen in race number 2. And the Riverhead Raceway on Long Island in New York had Tom Rogers picking up the win over Howie Brody and Kyle Soper, who also won the late model race earlier in the night. Just some of the NASCAR short track racing from around the country. Hannah Newhouse, there will be plenty more NASCAR short track racing this weekend, including a couple of NASCAR touring divisions that are back in action.
Yes, they will. The NASCAR K&N Pro Series East back in action, and they are finally headed out to Memphis. They're going to be out at Gateway. A first trip, I think, in a long time for the K&N Pro Series East, and a lot of drivers are looking forward to it. There was a tire test about a month or so ago that a couple drivers took place in, but for most of the field, this will be the first time these drivers hit the track this weekend, and I'll be there with NASCAR home tracks. I'm looking forward to it. I think we're going to see maybe a couple breakout drivers. I would like to see, you're going to see someone like Ruben Garcia or maybe even Chase Gabry, who's been so close in those Rev Racing cars on these big tracks, potentially walk away with the win.
Tyler Ankrum, the championship point leader by 11 over Tyler Dipple, heading to the Memphis International Raceway this weekend. The NASCAR Wheel and Modified Tour at Seekonk this weekend, and Justin Bonsignor has a 1-point lead over Chase Dowling, 5 points over Craig Lutz. It is tight atop the championship standings, Hannah, and Doug Coby still nowhere to be found after a rough start to the season, but this is where he scored his only win of 2017, so he'll be strong this weekend, no doubt.
We've seen Doug Coby come back before from this kind of a situation, but also, looking away from that, there's some really strong young guns in the field this year. You mentioned, Ronnie Williams and Chase Dowling and Craig Lutz. I think they're really going to give this championship chase a run for their money, and they're going to be there this weekend. So wouldn't be surprised if we see a new face as well in Victory Lane at Seekonk in the NASCAR Wheel and Modified Tour.
And we haven't even mentioned Timmy Solomito, who has contended for the last couple of modified championships, and some guy named Ryan Preece is racing there this Saturday as well. So it should be a great show. Always is when the modifieds hit the racetrack. Hannah, any big short track plans? Well, you're going to Memphis this weekend, right?
Yeah, I am, and it's supposed to be like 98 and humid. So fortunately, it's muggy and humid here in Charlotte. So I'm tuning myself up for Memphis this weekend, but looking forward to it. I've never been there and get to add another racetrack to my list.
Enjoy it. That'll do it for this edition of NASCAR Coast to Coast. Want to thank our guests Ryan Partridge and Nick Cunningham. For Hannah Newhouse and producers Daryl Smith and Jennifer Cochran, I'm Kyle Rickey. We'll see you back here next Wednesday on NASCAR Coast to Coast here on the Motor Racing Network.
NASCAR Coast to Coast has been brought to you by Hercules Tires and by Grunt Style. NASCAR Coast to Coast can be found on demand at MRN.com, iTunes, Google Play, YouTube, and SoundCloud. NASCAR Coast to Coast is a production of the Motor Racing Network. All rights reserved.